Good morning, Faith Presbyterian Church. Today is Memorial Day, and you're going to hear a sermon where I touch on the seasons of life. Well, there's going to be a season in our life briefly tomorrow where we are called to rest. It's Memorial Day. And when we have that day, let us remember those that lived with passion, love for country, and have paid the ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms. We want to say thank you for everyone that gave the ultimate sacrifice. God bless you and your families. Pastor Anthony Clauditis returning for another sermon here at Faith Presbyterian Church. We found a little place here in a chapel cafe that I think we're comfortable with and sharing these sermons. Now today I wore my Nike hoodie, and the reason why I wore it is because what I'm going to speak to you about today is about ideas that could change your life. In fact, I'm going to share two really important ideas that will change your life. Now that's a bold statement, I know. However, I know that these are things that changed my life, and they have changed countless numbers of other people's lives. So the key is of course, listen, but also apply and learn. Okay, so what are these ideas? The first is what we call the 3 modes of persuasion. Now, before we get into that, remember, I'm using the word persuasion, and that's different than manipulation. You do not manipulate people. You manipulate furniture, but you do not manipulate human beings. You persuade people. In the Bible, in the book of Acts, the Apostle Paul is persuading people to believe in Jesus Christ. So how can we get better at persuading others? And there was this Greek thinker named Aristotle, and he came up with the 3 best ways that you and I can help persuade people. These are the 3: logos, pathos, and ethos. Now we're going to start with the one on the left, and that's logos. Now with logos, you see the word logic, and you see a brain next to it. So I want to speak to you about that first. I want you to pretend that you're in church, or pretend that you're in a classroom setting, and there the pastor is giving a sermon. Well, that pastor's sermon better be logical. He better have points from A to B to C and so on. Because if he doesn't, then he's going to lose his audience. Now think about being in a classroom setting. Maybe you're in college, or you were in college. Maybe you had a professor that was very powerful at persuading others. But one of the things I bet she was logical. When she gave her PowerPoint presentations, when she passed out handouts, there was a logic to the order. There was a logic to the things that she had in order to teach you. Now, the second after logos is something we call pathos. Now, what you can see here is emotion and a heart. Let's go back to our same examples. You're in church or you're in a classroom setting. You can have a minister that's extremely logical. They have all of their points lined up, and they're preaching. However, if they're not passionate about those things, if what they're preaching about has not gripped them, then most likely it's not going to grip you. Same thing with a professor. If they're just going through the motions, most likely you're going to take a nap while in class, because it's important for what you're presenting to have some ownership in your own life. You have to be gripped by it. You have to be passionate about those things. And when you are passionate about those things, other people will notice that in you. It's contagious. So the first mode of persuasion is logos. The second is pathos. And the last one is ethos. Now, ethos is your character. It's your credibility. And this right here is the most important. And let me explain why. This is the trump card over pathos and ethos. So let's think about this for a moment. Let's go back to our same examples. You're in church. The pastor is logical. He's also passionate. And those are 2 of the 3. Now let's say that pastor is preaching on compassion, and he gives a compelling sermon. And then right after church, you see someone in the parking lot who's down and out, and you see the pastor walk right by the person into his or her car and leaves. What just happened? His or her ethos, the ethical part of the sermon, trumped what he just said, whether it was logical, and it showed that even though he was passionate about it, he didn't walk out the door and actually do it. So it's when you bring these three things together, it's extraordinarily powerful. Think of the parable of the Good Samaritan. This is a parable that Jesus told where there was a man who was beaten and left on the side of the road, and there was several people that walked by this person, but it was only one person that went and helped rescue this person and really gave of themselves. Those are our three modes of persuasion: logos, pathos, and ethos. And did you know in the Bible that there's a person named Apollos found in Acts chapter 18, that he is the embodiment of all three of these qualities? Now, in Acts chapter 18, we read these words, starting in verse 24. Now, a certain Jew named Apollos, an Alexandrian by birth, an eloquent man, came to Ephesus, and he was mighty in the scriptures. This man had been instructed in the way of the Lord, and being fervent in spirit, he was speaking and teaching accurately the things concerning Jesus, being acquainted only with the baptism of John. And he began to speak out boldly in the synagogue. So I want you to think of those three things for a moment: ethos, pathos, and logos. Listen how the Bible describes Apollos. One of the things it mentions about him is his background. It says that he was from Alexandria. It says that he was an eloquent man and that he was mighty in the scriptures. Well, that's about his reputation. And reputation, as we just learned, is about our ethos. It's your credibility. So before Apollos even got there, his reputation beat him there. That's why your ethos, your ethics are so important. You see, your credibility is rooted in the past. That is why when you submit a resume, there's always a reference page attached to it. Because in order to know if you're a person of credibility, you have to look in the past. And so what people do is they check those references to see if you are who you say you are. Now here, Apollos checked off ethos, but we see he also checks off pathos in that he's passionate. We see that in verse 25. It says that he was fervent in the spirit, and he was speaking and teaching accurately the things concerning Jesus. So here we learn something about his passion. And the Bible says that he was fervent in spirit. So it wasn't just that Apollos was teaching. It says that he had a fervent spirit. When you were around Apollos, I bet you can see the fire within him. So we have ethos, we have pathos, but where's logic? Well, we find that also in the Bible. Because after we learn that he was fervent in spirit, he was also speaking and teaching accurately on the things concerning Jesus. So there you have all three modes of persuasion found in the Bible and found in the life of one person. Apollos was logical, he was passionate, and he was ethical. You, the listener, think about each area in your own life. How can you take what you just learned and apply it in your own life? Now, I promised you in the beginning that I'm going to give you two lessons that's going to change your life. The first was the three modes of persuasion. The second is from a man by the name of Jim Rohn. Jim Rohn. I'm going to flip to my Bible in the book of Proverbs. Now, Jim Rohn talks about something called the four seasons. The four seasons. And he's not talking about the group from New Jersey. He's talking about the four seasons that you and I experience. And when he teaches on this, he always starts with the winter time. The winter time is when things are dead. Things are dying. And he relates that to our lives. In our lives, we're going to go through seasons of bad stuff. Whether those are things that we do to ourselves or whether those are things that happen to us. The book of James tells us that we will all go through trials. And I like to think about trials and storms interchangeably. Now, you and I are either in a storm, we are either walking out of a storm, or we're about to walk into a storm. Unfortunately, that's how life works. Those are the winters of our days. However, right after winter, there's the spring. That's the season we're in now. Spring is full of life. It's full of hope. It comes right after the fall. And maybe God does that on purpose. So we go from something dying to something living. Spring is where you and I need to get really busy planting. We need to get really busy in these seasons improving our lives. We cannot sit stagnant. So get out there and help yourself. And the best way you can do that is by reading, is by learning, going to seminars. You know, you could get online and watch seminars for free. And these things were once hundreds of dollars a ticket for people to go to. There's no excuse for you not to be knowledgeable in this day and age. So the spring is when you want to get active, you want to get aggressive, and you want to start planting. Because we all know what comes right after spring, of course, that's summer. Now, during the summer seasons, all that hard work is in the ground. You can't see it. And then all the little bugs start to swarm in and try to take the seeds and try to destroy the crops. And that's where you have to be aggressive to protect all that hard work. You have to be aggressive and put barriers up and boundaries up. Some of you listening to this need to put boundaries up in your own life, whether they're boundaries around family members or friends or perhaps things entertainment-wise or spending money, whatever it is, you need to put boundaries up around those things that you worked so hard for. And of course, the last season is autumn or fall, and this is the harvest. This is where you get out and you enjoy all the wonderful work that you had put in, and you enjoy all of the abundance that you have just planted. Those are the 4 seasons. Now, I told you I'm flipping in the book of Proverbs because Proverbs is a book about wisdom. And what I just showed you is a lot of wisdom contained therein. And in Proverbs chapter 6, he actually talks about an ant. All right, so I know you've seen ants before, but here's what he says. Go and look at the ant sluggard. That's a funny word. It's not something we use that often today. Observe her ways and be wise, which having no chief, officer, or ruler, prepares her food in summer and gathers her provision in the harvest. How long will you lie down? When will you arise from your sleep? A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest. And your poverty will come in like a vagabond, and your need like an armed man. So here in this passage, the writer, the author, is speaking about these seasons. He says, just look at nature. You can learn something from nature. Just look at that little teeny tiny ant. It's a hard worker. It doesn't rest. It has a goal, and then it accomplishes its goal. It doesn't put its feet up and rest for 4 seasons. It gets out there and it works hard. But then in Proverbs chapter 20, verse 4, we read, the sluggard does not plow after the autumn, so he begs during the harvest and has nothing. The sluggard does not plow after the autumn, so he begs during the harvest and has nothing. This is the person that's the exact opposite of the ant. While the ant is busy working, the Bible says that this person does not plow after the autumn, but he could be seen begging. He's actually begging during the harvest because he has nothing. And those verses remind us of the wisdom of the four seasons. So in conclusion, I made you a promise. I said this video can change your life. And it's not the video, it's the wisdom contained therein. It's what the Bible has to say. And these things work because God created us as humans to work this way, to be effective in these things. And so if you take these truths, you listen and learn, and you apply them, you're going to be better for it. And I guarantee you, the people around you will benefit too. So I'm going to leave you with this quote. You should work harder on yourself than on your job. If you work harder on yourself than on your job, you will reap incredible benefits, and so will others. Well, I hope this sermon and this message has blessed you. If this has encouraged you, you know what? If it encouraged you, then I'm going to ask that you share it, because sharing is caring. If you know someone that would enjoy the message, share it with them. Also, if you like our YouTube page, go ahead and hit like and subscribe and drop us a comment. We'd love to hear back from you.